Welcome to Queer Art Podcast. This interview series documents the prodigious yet visually dissonant work of LGBTQIA+ artists. My name is Christopher Stout. I'm a New York City artist and the creator and moderator of this series. By sharing the perspectives and life stories of trailblazing elders and rising voices, I hope to broaden our understanding of both the aesthetics and the people defining contemporary queer art. Thank you for listening. Hello, this is artist and podcast moderator Christopher Stout. I'd like to share two quick notes before we proceed with today's interview with Anthony Viti. The first is this photo found on page 8 of the book Grand Fury, Read My Lips, Art is Not Enough. The photo, taken by Mark Hinojosa, was originally published in Newsday, March 25, 1988. The caption reads, Grand Fury member Anthony Viti carried away by the police. Grand Fury was a New York City-based AIDS activist artist collective, active from 1988 to 1995. Emerging out of ACT UP, which stands for AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, the 11-member group was devoted to AIDS activism through agitprop art. Anthony is the artist I am speaking with today. It's also very important to Anthony that I share this interview without any editing, and I've honored his request. There's a sequence where we get disconnected from the video player and then log back on. I hope this adds a layer of reality to our conversation. I know Anthony as a mentor and as a friend, and it is a true privilege to share our conversation. Here we go. Welcome to Queer Art Podcast. This is season 1, episode 6. Why don't we just dive right in, because our opening questions will help our audience learn a little bit more about you. So, in addition to the title of artist, which letters from the LGBTQIA+ acronym would you like to claim?
All of them. I feel like I'm a part of this larger community, a larger network. So I identify with all of them. And then second, perhaps gay.
Okay.
and queer.
Never heard that answer before. What are your preferred pronouns?
They're not important to me. I think whore is a good one.
Okay.
Seriously though, I mean, most people use the he when referring to me, and I do identify as a he, but pronouns really aren't that important to me.
For how many years have you been making visual art?
My entire life.
Okay. How old were you when you started? That you remember?
I was coloring out of the lines in coloring books, and my mother was worried about that. She thought that perhaps something was going on with me cognitively. So, I mean, I can't really tell you when it began.
Okay, great. I think there's an answer in your articulation. So, describe the physical aspects of your art in layman's terms. What types of art do you make? What processes or technologies are used? What materials are used?
Okay. I came out in the AIDS epidemic in 1982. My first real introduction to the epidemic was as a senior at SUNY Purchase, and I think it was the spring of '83. And GMHC came up, and I don't remember the content of the talk, honestly. I remember being completely anxious and wondering, like, what the fuck am I stepping into? And so since then, all my work has been a response or about my engagement in the AIDS epidemic. And using different kinds of materials. I like to explore materials and how they relate to the subject matter that I'm working with. So throughout my whole career, I've used many different kinds of materials. And even as a child, played with ceramics, painting, off and on the loom weaving, all sorts of stuff.
Where is your studio based? I think we're sitting in it, or you're sitting in it.
Yeah. My studio is my apartment.
Right.
And in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, and I've lived here for going on 42 years. And it's been my workspace the entire time.
I feel like that's the front room because I've visited your studio and there's that large archive in the back, and then there's sort of a work. And this feels like you're sitting in that front room where there's more, I wouldn't call it a salon, but there's room for viewing paintings.
Yeah, much more room since you were last here. I had storage over here, and all that was moved into this bedroom that I used to rent out.
Right. Wonderful. So I think the thing to do next is to help people understand what your work looks like, or understand your work by looking at it. So what we're going to do is a short review. I have a series of 3 images. If you could walk us through title, date, materials, and just a brief synopsis about the work. And I want to use this as a springboard of asking some questions about you.
Okay. This work that you see right now is from '93, using an abstract language, making a connection to the history of abstraction done by queer people as a way to hide, not hide, but code information about their sexual identities. And in this case, I'm quoting Marsden Hartley's portrait of a German officer who made these dramatic military paintings in the teens, 19 teens, and memorializing a possible lover of his, Karl von Freiberg. Freiberg was awarded an Iron Cross posthumously for his distinguished service, and Marsden Hartley features them prominently in these abstract paintings, along with Karl's initials, things that they like to do together, play chess, parts of von Freiberg's uniform. And a reason why I'm drawing a connection between my work and these military paintings is to draw a connection between the experience of AIDS and war, and that we're experiencing incessant life threat, constant loss, and uncertainty about the future.
Yes.
And these are 15 inches square. It was in these paintings that I began to use my blood and imprint my body as a way to address the possible risks that are involved in these body fluids. So that's what's happening here.
This feels like such a pedestrian question, but it's noted as elegy 57. Were there 56 prior, and how many elegies were there?
I've lost count.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you made them continuously?
No, I stopped. I can't remember when I stopped.
Okay.
Shortly, as I got more involved with the imprint of my body, I recognized that I needed a larger surface. And
Right.
so I started to work on holocore doors. And it's then where I started to explore my use of urine and powdered pigments, begins not using paint, but powdered pigments, rubbing the pigment with turpentine into the surface of the holocore door, and began continuing my connection, or the connection between AIDS and war. I was entitling them after Walt Whitman's drum tap poems, from titles, from different texts from the poems. He was a nurse during the Civil War, and so these were
On this computer. Very good, as you were. So here is the second work. Can you tell us a little about this one, please?
So in this body of work, the INR series came after this work on holocore door that I was entitling the works after Walt Whitman's drum tap poems.
Yeah, forgive me.
And
For people like myself who don't know what a holocore door is, can you just say, can you tell me, please?
yeah, of course. So a holocore door is this door that is made with this really thin luan, which is kind of a really thin plywood. And at the top and the bottom, there's a piece of wood that provides this width. And then inside, in between the two layers of luan, is this lattice of cardboard that supports it. And it's this really cheap door that you often see in suburban homes.
Got it. And is there
Yeah.
something about that door that, is there a porousness that allows it to accept pigment or other things or paint more readily?
I would prime it with acrylic gesso.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would prime it with acrylic gesso. And one of the reasons why I started to make these larger paintings is because I started to move on the holocore doors, and I needed more amount of space to move.
Right.
And in these works on canvas, this is 66 inches square, I would spackle the gesso into the weave of the canvas, and then sand it, spackle, sand it, spackle. So there's a surface, a really smooth surface. And the smoother that I got, the more information would be recorded as I moved on the surface of the painting. And in these works, I entitled them I and R after a phrase that I saw in a safer sex pamphlet written for BDSM communities. And that phrase was ingenuity and risk, that we needed to use our ingenuity and take risks in developing and practicing safer sex practice in the face of AIDS. And it's in these works that I started to use my urine, this black liquid material that you see flowing through the paintings is evaporated urine. I learned that when I would pee on a work early in the morning, it would leave this oily residue once it evaporated. And so that would pick up this powdered charcoal or powdered pigment that I would use to dust the surface. Also, in this work, this is when I started doing this in the Iron Cross works, but here it's more evident where I'm using the blood as a resist to the pigment, rubbing the pigment into the surface while there was blood on it, and then washing the blood away, and I would have this negative imprint of what I had just done.
Right.
And as the paintings got bigger, I had to economize on the blood because I could only have so much drawn a month. So I started to use cornstarch, cooking up cornstarch and putting that on my body and moving around. And that actually picked up more detail of the body movement. Um, and it's about this time that my relationship to abstraction changes. At first, it was referring to this history of abstraction that needed to be coded by gay people because of homophobia. And now I'm playing with people more with this, presenting this what seems to be an abstract painting, and then through close viewing, things start to shift, and a viewer is hopefully begins to recognize the body moving across the surface and the materials it was made with.
Just my post, I understand how the markings on this would be done with a brush and other things. And then when I get prompted to understand that it's a body, then it becomes very evident. And really makes me pause. It feels like the repurposing of a language, and then suddenly the source language is like completely erased.
It flips.
Yeah.
And in part of me wants to kind of destabilize the viewer. I had a studio visit a couple years ago where the visitor said, "This work is really passive aggressive." And I thought, oh, there's no passivity to my aggression. Like,
right.
And later on, I was talking about these works and how things would shift, a point of view would shift once recognizing the process and the materials. And then I realized that's what he was talking about,
right,
as being passive aggressive.
Work 3. This is work 1. Huh. Yeah. Do it manually. There it is.
There it is. That's 3.
Yes.
So as I described earlier in our interview, I described how my work history is autobiographic and follows my experience in the AIDS epidemic. And these two images, the image on the left is using pigment similarly to how I was using with the body fluid paintings, heavily priming canvas till it's really smooth and rubbing powdered pigment with turpentine. And again, using tape, not again, but in this case, using tape and frisket to resist the application of the pigment. And making the sexuality and the sex more explicit. Shortly before these, I had seroconverted. Most of the body fluid works were done when I was negative, pardon me. And once I seroconverted, I didn't want to use that material anymore because the narrative changed. Here we had this blood that people could identify as risky. And prior to that, it was the potential risk. And hence the name Ingenuity and Risk. And so in this work, I was making the sexuality more explicit. And the work on the right are images that I pirated from gay cruising sites, sites particularly that eroticize HIV infection. And this was before PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis. And so the reason why I show these images is because it leads to what I'm working with now. Video is called Ass Pig. And in these images that I found on cruising sites, there was a lot of similarities. And so I would organize them in their similarity, like blowjob looking down, blowjob looking up, legs down, bent over, and started to arrange them as if they were cells in an animation.
Right.
And it wasn't a fluid animation, it was like stuttering. And I didn't change the format of the picture, so it was like and it was really aggressive. It was shown at a mixed festival that year that I made it, and it got a really nice response. And then Billy Miller programmed it in a video program that he did at the bookstore at the community center. What's the acronym for this store? Do you remember?
Bureau of General Services Queer Division.
Yes.
Yes.
And people were really pissed off. Like people were moaning during the whole 8 minutes.
The delight in your laugh, tells us everything. That is like, I understand what you're saying, sir.
And even the guys who run it, they were really hostile to me. And I was like, yes. It was a pretty funny experience.
I am going to pivot. And this is delightful because I feel like there is such a muscularity in those 3 slides of communicating, like such a varied environment, but a singularity also in your work. But I want to talk about you. So when did
But pardon me, I'm interrupting. What do you see as singularity in the work?
I experienced, so when I was putting these slides together,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had that sort of lightboard view.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were 6 tiles of all the images, and there was a congruence in your palette, and there's a congruence in how you form shapes and how you use lines. There's certainly differentiation between sort of like states of minimalism and states of maximalism.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at the thing and there's a unity. I wish I had that. So I look at anything and I know immediately like whose hands I'm looking at. But that being said, sometimes you start exactly at the hot place and burn bright. And sometimes you start at a place that is entirely coated and make me feel, I'm going to say, like I feel myself leaning in because I know what I'm looking at, and then suddenly realizing it's completely a different conversation.
Nice.
And nevertheless, in all of those scenarios, I understand the authorship, and that's what I mean. There's something about a very specific color family and a very specific relationship with shape and line. Sometimes those lines are words, and sometimes those lines are not words. And I think that that's sometimes part of the coding versus representation. But that's what I meant by that. Yeah. I think my favorite moment of preparing for this podcast was like just staring simultaneously at a light board of 6 things and just feeling delight, enjoyment, and nourishment from seeing like this environment of your work.
Yeah. In the last few years, as I have studio visits, I've been pulling out a whole range of work from beginning with the Iron Crosses. And before I started showing this larger body of work, I thought that perhaps the history was disjointed because of my use of many different kinds of materials.
Right.
But as I was pulling these out and experiencing them as a group from the beginning to the present, I started to really see a connection with kind of a formal connection as well as the narrative, my experience in the AIDS epidemic.
I personally experienced the materials as a conduit, and what I see that unifies them is the way that you specifically manipulate them with your hand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the next question is, when did you experience your first deep connection with art? And if you know, when did you first realize that art would become your profession?
I always had a deep connection with making things, and making art really became a mode of survival for me. And I never thought of, I don't know when I became conscious of when I wanted it to be my profession. Um, I wasn't encouraged to um, to explore it. Matter of fact, my guidance counselor said to me once, this
Wait,
is,
high school gown? What?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, high school. Those SAT, do students still have to take those SAT tests?
I believe they do.
Uh, he told me that my test said that I wasn't a people person, and that to be an artist, you needed to be a people person. And I thought, Mr. Perry, you have your head up your ass. And because it was, it couldn't be further from the truth. I grew up Catholic, and it's where I learned the importance of service, that the world was a lot bigger than what I was experiencing. And that was really important to me. Luckily, I did not experience the trauma that some people experience in the Catholic Church. Though it was where I began to become more aware of my sexuality, in particular the bodily obsessions, Jesus hanging on this cross, um, you know, the um, the miracle of turning the host into the body of Christ, the stations of the cross along the sides of the church, recording his somatic experiences, falling, uh, things like that. And then as well as the visual engagement in the visual, these really beautiful abstract, um, leaded glass, stained glass windows, this beautiful painting of Mary in the back of the main altar, and all the iconography that's associated with the church, was really important to me. And that was my introduction to visual language and the beginning of it all.
You teased a little about this in your answer, but the other origin question then is, when did you begin to understand your sexual orientation? And then I'm not asking a physical question, but what was your coming out process like?
Uh, not easy. I mean, I was aware of it since an early age. I didn't know what it was, but I remember being, I don't know, like about as high as somebody's waist, and being at the locker room in the state pool, Letro State Park, um, and seeing these men's hairy genitalia, and kind of curious about it. And so this curiosity happened throughout all of my elementary school, and I became more aware of my attraction to men, particularly when I was an altar boy, when there was these uh, kind of segregated space in the sanctuary, which was mostly men and boys. I became more aware of it, as well as in Boy Scouts. Both were like safe places for me. I love Boy Scouts. I mean, nothing sexual happened during that period, but it was something that I became more aware of. And as I started to identify it as gayness in my teens, um, it became kind of challenging for me. Throughout all my life, I was teased about being a sissy. Um, I had my ears pierced when I was, I think, a junior or sophomore in high school. And the kids started to write graffiti about me. And it wasn't all that, it wasn't very pleasant. I grew up in a small town of about, the village was, I think, 4,000 people. Luckily, there was a state college there, and I had a lot of access to music, to other cultural events. There was a great bookstore. There was a great record store called Buzzo's. So most of my socializing happened on college campus and with college kids. Um, yeah.
And is that when you came out? Was it college?
No, no. I came out, well, I came out in college between my junior and senior year of college. It took me a while to come out because of the homophobia and uh, yeah, the homophobia that I experienced as a kid. Um, I actually did a short stint in evangelical Christianity, which I love saying because it seems so perverted, considering who I am right now. And it was a safe place for me not to have to address my sexuality. And I knew it was something I wanted to address, but I had to find the safe space to do it.
Right.
And that didn't happen until I went to a small museum school in Utica, my first 2 years of college, and then transferred to SUNY Purchase. Not only did I know it was a really good art school, but I knew that there was a large LGBTQ community there, and it was my plan to come out there,
Right.
which was what I did.
Got it.
And, for me, SUNY Purchase was like Dorothy landing in Oz. But I didn't want to go back home. I wanted to stay in Oz.
I feel like you've said this, but I'm going to re-ask the question. So tell us the relationship between the art that you make. No, you haven't answered this question. You've answered a similar question. But tell us the relationship between the art that you make and your queer identity. Or gay identity, if we're using a G.
Well, it's always been autobiographical since I came out. So that's always been a major theme in my work.
Right.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
What do you hope viewers are better able to understand about the world from viewing your work?
I don't have control over that in my work.
Sure.
Um, uh, I mean, one of the things I'm hoping is that it unsettles people, that it
Right.
gets them to rethink what they're looking at, what their experiences are, um, as well as telling the story about my life in the AIDS epidemic.
Okay. I think that actually makes for a fantastic segue into the next section of our program, which is to look at work and do a deep dive on one specific piece, armed with more information about you and your life. So this is where we've been. This is where we've been. This is where we've been. Here is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
This is a piece called Untitled Finger Dribble.
Yes.
Would you please, and I know there's more than one image, so I'm going to ask you to guide me as to how to move the screen around.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So share the story of this work what happened that led you to make it, and what might it signify about you as an artist? It's recent work.
Yes. This is made on a packing blanket used to wrap around furniture in transit. Um, I would also use them in decorating for this party at the Lure, which was this leather fetish club on West 13th Street in the meatpacking district. And I started to I found one and started playing with it and started to excavate the surface of the blanket, exposing the stuffing, and it fell apart. And then it took me a couple years more till I picked it up again. And something that I get excited about is this kind of subtractive method is what I've been doing all along. This idea of the resist and pulling something away, off. And that's what's happening here. And these images are coming from the Aspig video that I made, these explicit images, where I would play with them in Photoshop, kind of make them more abstract. And I would also collage images together and then start to excavate the surface, exposing the stuffing. So it's mostly subtractive, though sometimes I do go in and sew in some material if I feel like I've lost some of the image that I would like to keep. In this context right here on the small screen, I think it's pretty recognizable about what it is.
Right.
And in real life, but they look more abstract, and it takes time for people to recognize what's happening. So not only are these blankets used as protection, I've also used them in sex play. They cushion a hard surface. They're absorbent. So there's a lot of stories that are embedded in the blanket, quite literally.
And then I'm going the wrong way. How do these relate to that work?
That they're also a resist. And though here I'm starting to shift the narrative about sex into aging, and it's still bodily concerns. This one that you have up is spray paint painting, and again, I would take an image, manipulate it in Photoshop, and I created these layers similar to perhaps layers in a silk screen.
Right.
And in each layer, I would rip off small pieces of masking tape and apply it to this raw canvas, areas where I did not want the spray paint to be. And this is, I can't remember how tall this is. I think it's like 70 some inches. And so it's really quite
66.
large. 66 inches tall. And so it's incredibly labor intensive and takes a lot of time to do this. And my hands are suffering from it. So the process is similar, and it's still obsessed with the body.
Yeah, I remember being in your studio once. I think maybe in the previous one, it's a little more evident, but I remember just watching you over the course of an hour take a razor blade and just slowly etch away, almost in sort of a sculptural sort of way, like holes within the fabric itself to create and then just sort of like gently manipulate the stuffing underneath, and just like this sort of like all these little micro uh manipulations, then forming this sort of like what I would call a different sort of like photorealism, but it doesn't have anything to do with photos in the outcome, because it's the technologies are different. It's like fiber art, it's this or whatever, but like it's just sort of like gobsmacking to think of the hours and learning, and sort of the experimentation of learning of how to take a blanket and turn it into something that shares sort of an origin story with uh, photography.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I just wanted to really make sure that people understood like what this is and how it's made.
Yeah, go back to the blanket for a moment.
Yes, please, of course.
Yeah, I use these small scissors, and in some cases, where I'm cutting away is really small and minuscule, and one of the things I like about the packing blanket, and this is really only with the older blankets. I'm constant search of these older blankets because the um, the cushioning material inside is a shredded fabric,
Right.
and you see all sorts of colors in this shredded fabric, and sometimes I see sequins. And with the newer blankets, they use this non-woven material as the shell, and there's no variation in the stuffing, and so it's one of the things I like about using the blankets. And also, you kind of referred to it about my relationship to the materials. It's really one of the things I really enjoy is getting to know the materials and playing with it, like playing with the body, the blood, and realizing that the blood would resist the pigment. Learning that if I peed on a painting early in the morning, there'd be more of this oily material or oily substance after the urine evaporated that would pick up the powdered pigment. Um, so it's something I really enjoy, working with these different kinds of materials.
Yeah. So we've missed an image. There's this last one here.
Yeah.
Said
And
you want to talk about materials.
yes, and this is corrugated cardboard. Um, During the shutdown, uh, there was tons of cardboard during the shutdown in 2020, and throughout the years of pandemic, there was tons of cardboard on the street. So I started to drag it back, and seeing how it's similar to the packing blanket,
Right.
in that there are these layers of material. And so I started using these. I had a number of medical events, chronic medical conditions that reared their head in the past 6 years. And one of them was diagnosed with having these epilepsy, and I was having these seizures uh, that I initially thought were panic attacks because I was having these incredibly high definition visions of trauma of AIDS, and I thought it was triggered by COVID. So I've been using these medical images, and what we're looking at right now are images from a CT scan of my brain, which it goes through your body through layers. And so here I'm using different layers of the CT scan of my brain. One where it's more definitive than the other. The other is less definitive. And I would take one layer of the CT scan to one layer of the corrugated cardboard, and then the other to another layer, and it gets really complex. And again, playing with abstraction. Sometimes people recognize that it's a medical image. And these works, the cardboard, particularly the cardboard, becomes kind of like a relief. Um, I loved the Syrian reliefs at the Met, and I always think about them and when I'm making these and looking at these. And similarly to the blankets, these cardboard pieces are boxes, they're containers, and I open them up, and the CT scans are also penetrating the container of my body, the skin, looking at the material inside my body. Hence the numerical names. This is, I think, the date, and I can't remember what the
9:27 p.m. A.
Yeah, so it's the date and the scan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do the words queer and art mean to you when you put them together? What do you see in terms of work that's being made now by your peers, and how do you think queer art might change?
So I feel conflicted about it. On one hand, um, I think it's important to identify a difference, right? You know, that as queer people or as gay people, whomever, have a different experience from the larger culture around us. And there's a lot of bias against the LGBTQ plus communities. And so on one hand, I think it's important to talk about that and to place it in that context. On the other hand, I think it's also a way of ghettoizing. And the work that I make, the work that other queer people make. And there's nothing, well, there's a lot of things that piss me off, but one of the things that pisses me off is when people say, oh, this person is really interested in queer work. And I was like, well, are only queer people interested in queer work? Like, why does it have to be pushed into this category? Did people in the sexually explicit work that Jeff Koons does with Kuchelina, I can't remember her name. Did people say, oh, that's like straight work? Like, so I'm frustrated with that. So I feel conflicted.
I've noticed or experienced like there's a seismic shift going on again in our ecological system, and that things are changing visually. Do you have any opinions about what you think work might look like 10 years ago? I mean, 10 years from now?
My work or work in general?
Sure. You can slice that any way you want to slice it.
I have no clue.
Okay.
And I don't really think about it as queer or not queer work. I, I it feels like I look at this larger picture of contemporary art, and maybe it's just aging, but I see a lot of things repeated from history, and history that's not so long ago.
Right.
And that's kind of odd. I don't know if it's because of aging or maybe people really don't know that history. And I kind of think it's a little bit of both.
Okay. Um, is there a final important thought about your work that you'd like to share with our listeners? And what is the best way for people to learn more about you and your work?
I think we've talked about my work in a way that I've expressed everything that I want people to know about my work.
Perfect.
So I don't think that there's more. What was the second part of your question?
How do people learn about you?
Mhm. I have a website, anthony.viti.com. And there's other material on the web on the internet. There's a lecture I did at Bowdoin College Museum of Art about 2 years ago now that I
That's
think.
extraordinary.
Thank you. I did another interview with this media collective called 8 Ball, and I met this person at a Julius Eastman concert, and we were sitting right next to each other. And one of the things, I love to talk with people when I go to performances. I love going to hear music, and I love going to the opera, and I'll do them by myself because it's a pain in the ass to find people to go to these things with you. You ask them and like, oh well, I have to think about it, and there's no bitch, tell me now. And so I don't bother anymore. I just get my own tickets, and which opens it up for me to talk to people I don't know. This young person is a part of this media collective, 8 Ball, and it was really interested in our conversation and wanted to continue it and do an interview with me for 8 Ball Media. And before this person came over to my place to interview me, I met them at their location, and it was a location at the bottom of Bowery, and I loved it. It was this dusty old space just filled with stuff like their archive of zines, recordings. They had all this old recording technology. It was an exciting, dusty place. And so that's on the internet someplace. And
Great.
it's called 8 Ball. And people can contact me through my emails on my website.
Wonderful.
So if they want to contact me. One of the reasons why I do these things is Sarah Schulman and Jim Hubbard wanted to interview me for the ACT UP Oral History Project.
Right.
And because I was involved from the beginning for the first 3 years. And so I was there for the formation of it. And this all came about when my father was dying and I was seroconverting, and I didn't feel like I could do it emotionally. And then it became too late for them to interview me. And so I regret that. And so now whenever I have the opportunity to tell my story, I do.
And I'm touched. I have all the books that people have about that. There's a book I was just showing my husband a few days ago, and I'm like, in preparing for this, and I'm like flipping through, and I'm like, I'm interviewing him. So sorry that you weren't able to be in that archive, and I'm thrilled that you were able to talk about your story here. And I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you being on this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. And don't edit yourself out. Promise
If
me.
you insist. Yes,
I
I promise.
insist.
All right. Thank you, friend.
Okay, thank you. You have a nice
Bye.
day. Bye-bye.
We've reached the conclusion of this episode of Queer Art Podcast. My hope is that our conversation with Anthony Viti has added a useful layer to your understanding of queer art. Please share this video with your own creative community. For more information, Anthony Viti's art and contact links are listed on the left side of this screen. Ours are on the right. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.